Good evening and welcome to Saturday Sketching. Hey friends, welcome to Saturday Sketching. If you've been here before, thanks for coming back. If you're new here, welcome, and I hope you have fun. If you're just joining us, last week we did a light pencil sketch of one of my favorite classic movie monsters, Dracula. Today we're going to be inking over that sketch with our Sharpie markers. If you want to catch up, feel free to pause this video and go back and find last week's session and watch that first. Otherwise, feel free to wing it and follow along with us right now. With that out of the way, let's grab our markers and get started. We don't really have to pick any specific spot to start in, but I guess since we started at the head last time, why don't we start there? This one's going to be a little bit easier than last week because all you're really doing is tracing what you have. So you may not even need to follow along with me. Apologies if I'm going through this kind of fast. It's just sort of an instinct. When you're tracing something, it just kind of is one line after another. And yeah, that's essentially what we're doing here, is tracing what we have. You might see some stuff in your pencil drawing that doesn't really mesh with what it winds up being in the ink drawing, so you might go over it, and that's fine too. It doesn't have to be exactly the way it looked in pencil. So here we go. We're going to fill our first spot of ink here, covering up those X's just like we always intended to. Okay, go over the eyebrows. So already starting to look pretty good. Feeling pretty good about this one. Try to be as light as you can with these smaller areas. You know, Sharpies tend to bleed, so, you know, you may not get the fineness of the line that you got with your pencil drawing. Just try to be as light as you can. Fill that in with black. Looking pretty good. Okay. All right, so this is where we're going to start to get into the deeper shaded area. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start a line, follow that along, back up to the top. Just like that, and as I do it, I'll fill in spaces with black as I'm going along. So actually coming back down here, swing this back up like that, and I'm going to fill this space with black. I tend to go back down over the stuff that I've markered over just to kind of even out the amount of ink that's sitting on top of it. You don't have to do that. It's just something I've always done. Okay. And every time you complete a line and you're in a space that needs filling, you can fill over it. That's kind of what I do. Okay, go back down and go over that again. Looking pretty good so far. Yep, a lot of it is just filling in the lines, you know what I mean? More black over here. I tend to sometimes jump around with these sorts of things. Like I'll start in this area, and then if I get bored with it, I'll bounce to another area of it. But I'll try to keep things as consistent as I can for the sake of the video. And again, you might, a lot of this is just tracing, so you might feel more comfortable starting at a different section coming back. See, I just jumped like that. I didn't even really think about it as I was doing it. You know, yeah, you can just kind of do whatever feels right for you. There's not really much technique to it, at least as in, you know, the way I do it. A lot of it comes from just building up the shapes in the pencil drawing and filling them in. But now you can sort of see how the highlights are going to stand out in the final drawing. See, so here's something that's interesting that I did here. Now I cut off this highlight line over here and had this stretch out. I was going to have this all filled in black, but this is also going to be filled in black. So these lines are going to blend together and it's not really going to make sense. So what I'm actually going to do here is extend my highlight line and pull it up just like that. That way, when I fill this in with black and this in with black, they'll be separated. And that's sort of what I meant before when I said that you might find things in your pencil drawing that don't really work with how they're going to look in ink. There are countless times just like that where I sort of realize how different something is going to look. And sometimes, you know, when you step away from a drawing, things stand out at you that didn't stand out when you initially were doing it. So, yeah, a lot of filling in space. But this is starting to look pretty dramatic, which is great. It's what you want when you're dealing with Dracula. Let's see. Keep line coming up here. Fill in the hand. Just like that. Okay. Another highlight line. You want to be extra careful when the lines get closer together. Fill in that space. You might wind up seeing some cuts in the video in sections where I have to fill in a lot of black space, especially in here probably. So just bear with me on that. You can always pause the video and catch up. It's just for the sake of keeping things concise. It's not that I'm not doing the work. It's not like a cooking show where they just pull out a finished meal already. It's just, I guess it is sort of like that, but the point is, you know, I just want to keep it short and sweet. And so that's what we're going to try to do. But yeah, looking good so far. Yeah, another thing, see another line here that I'm not totally happy with. I'm actually going to take the end of this line and put it out here. So what I'm going to do is pull that up and connect it to the pre-existing line. Because I like all this, but this didn't really make sense to me, so I changed it. And you'll find that'll happen sometimes if you're inking a drawing. You might want to change things. And then you can go back in and erase the previous line that didn't work for you. That way it was like it was never there, and you always had it perfectly right from the very beginning, and nobody has to have any clue. Okay, so we'll add that line there. Another line here. Okay. So far, so good. Gonna connect the collar up here. Got his white collared shirt. And now I'm filling this in with black. It's not because he doesn't have a neck, but it's, you know, in my vision of the drawing, you know, it's probably covered in a lot of shadow. So you just don't see it, you know, very clearly in the light. Sometimes you take artistic liberties with these sorts of things. Yeah, a lot of filling in going on here. This is the sort of therapeutic part of drawing it for me. That's what it's always been, where I could just shut my mind off and just fill in blank space. I always liked that. You didn't really have to think too hard about what you were doing. The lines are, for the most part, already there. All you have to do is scribble. That's pretty nice. I missed the line there a bit. I'll just go back over that and fill that in with black. It's getting filled in with black anyway, so you can afford to make that little mistake there. Or I guess I can. And the rest of his hand here. Go. And again, I sort of missed the line, so I'm going to go back over it. There's plenty of black space to go in there and fix it. Here's another case of these two lines aren't, like, you're not going to be able to see this line because it's going to be filled in with black, and so is this. So again, I'm going to go in and fix that highlight line so that everything becomes visible. Some ink in here, keep things in shadow. A little curvy with the line there, feel free to go over it. Oh, looks like I extended into the hand a little bit. Can just recede that a little bit. And again, don't feel compelled to do things at the speed or that I'm doing them at, or, you know, do it the same way, exactly the same way that I'm doing it. Just do what feels comfortable. On all, you know, on little lines like that, you want to make sure you take your time and get it as carefully as you can. So that, you know, anytime you can avoid mistakes is good, you know. So I'm a little bit reckless in that way, so I just kind of dashed over it. But feel free to take things at your own pace. Most of these videos have a pause button, so that's good. You can use that anytime you want to slow things down. I can never tell how fast or slow I'm going for people. So, you know, do whatever you feel you need to do to make this work for you. Okay, gonna do the outside of the cape here. You don't have to do all these lines in one swoop. Just make sure that the beginning and end of your lines connect. Because I could never get like a curvy line like that perfect in one shot, so I always had to go back over it again. Just make sure that the lines connect. That way, again, nobody will be any the wiser. Everyone can think that you did it all in one shot and that you're really, really good at this. Notice how I'm completely putting off doing all that because that is a lot of scribbling. And again, I will probably do a jump cut when I get to that section, so be prepared for that. Be prepared to pause so that you can scribble your way through it. Just know that I endured the scribbling just like you did. You just might not see it. What you can do with big sections like that, if you're using just a small, regular size Sharpie like that, is to just do it in sections. Draw a line here, scribble it in, that's done. Boom. Draw another line up here, scribble that in. That way you're only doing in bits and pieces instead of just scribble all the way down. It becomes a lot more stressful when you take it on as with just one big solid block. Maybe I should just keep it in the video so that everybody can see that I'm also doing it. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. Great. Go over it. Here, I'll do a little connector there. Yeah, just make it a little bit easier for yourself. And you don't have to do it all at once, too. Well, a big mistake that I've always made in my life is just pushing through, like, whatever, pain and exhaustion just to get something done. You don't have to do that. You shouldn't do that. If you scribble a section in, you can take a second, take a break, Get your bearings. It's going to take a long time regardless, so you may as well pace yourself. I start to notice a little bit of lightness in some of the places that I've already filled in, so I just scribble over it again, and that sort of fills that space. Again, you don't have to do that. If it looks right to you, that's all that matters. I'm going to come down here. These tighter spaces are always easier to fill in because they take less time. I'm sort of all over the place with the way I do things because now I'm not doing the sections anymore. I'm just kind of going for it, which again, you shouldn't feel compelled to do. If you want to keep doing it in sections, you should. I should be doing it in sections, but I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know. Okay. Make this section a little bit bigger. And if you do stuff like this in the future, if you decide to go forward with your illustration work and your sketching practice, and you want to do something like this again with big spaces of black, I recommend getting one of these big wedge Sharpie markers. They can cover a lot of ground if you use the edges of them. They cover a bit more ground than the regular size Sharpie. That said, I didn't mention those in the initial planning of this project, so I'm gonna not cheat and use that. I'm gonna stick to the regular one because that's what we kind of gave everybody. And we don't want to be using tools that we didn't provide to anybody. It's perfectly fine to do it with the regular Sharpie as well, there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. Just an idea for your future endeavors if you decide to keep going with your drawing and you're looking for something that covers a bit more ground. You might be able to see in the harsh light of day where some of the lines of our sections are. that's where going over it again sort of comes into play. I'll just do a big broad scribble over everything that sort of blends everything together. Makes it a little easier on the eyes. Almost done with Drac here, then we can move on to the castle. Make sure those lines connect in a way that makes sense. Okay, got all the sections filled. Now, once again, I'm gonna do a little bit of scribbling here to kind of fill in that negative space a little bit more. Blend these sections together. You know, sometimes it doesn't seem like it makes a world of difference, but when you show it to people, it does. Or at least it does to me. If it doesn't to you, you can completely skip this part. That's totally fine. Maybe I just like the extra scribbling. Who knows? Okay. So we have our Dracula here. Gonna do some line work stretching out here to show where the ground is, like we did before. Fill those extra lines at the bottom in. Okay, now for our castle. Why is this tower so separated from the rest of them? I imagine it's probably some kind of watchtower or something. Maybe before Dracula took over this castle, there was some kind of guard station there or something. I don't know. Okay. Now back to tracing the line work for our castle here. Now this sort of trails off, and what we can do is scribble in over here. You know, obviously a line of that angle kind of defies gravity a bit. You can extend it and kind of have it go out like that instead. And the tops of the towers. I kind of bounce around a lot, as you can see. I've probably mentioned that before. You know, whatever feels comfortable to you, do it at your own pace, from your own angles. Let's see. Now, I'm going to outline these windows here a little bit bigger than I drew them in pencil, because when we fill them in, they're actually going to get smaller to the eye. So, you know, you make them a little bit bigger than they need to be. See, because the black outline of the line drawing actually blends into the rest of the fill, so you actually wind up losing a little bit of the shape of it, or the size of it, I should say, when you fill in. Okay, try to keep this straight. Another big wall of blank space we need to fill in. Seems like a tough task when you're going at it straight on. But, you know, it is kind of something that I like. You know, if I'm listening to music or a podcast or something and I'm just drawing, it's great because then I don't have to think too hard about anything. I can just listen to my music and scribble away. But like I said, if you're doing this like this, you can pause, take a break. It's a real cramp in the hands sometimes to do all this scribbling. So definitely take breaks and stretch those hands out. Okay, take a break. Crack the old knuckles, even though I think you're not supposed to do that. I don't remember. It's hard to keep track. Doesn't matter. Gonna erase some of this pencil line work here because it's visible. And we'll come back and do the rest of it in a second. But let's finish this first. Now we're gonna do our little abstract sky/clouds section. And again, this doesn't have to perfectly match what you did in the pencil drawing, but, you know, you can try. You can just trace over it, that's fine. A little different than what we had before, but I'm gonna erase some of the excess pencil work, and that'll make it easier and look better. Okay. We'll get to our moon in a second. I like to fill in the edges of a space sometimes. It makes it easier because then when I go out, I can be a little bit more broad in my strokes. And I don't have to worry about accidentally scribbling off some of the drawing that I just did. Okay, now that I'm back at the bottom, we'll do a trace around our moon here. And again, it's not going to be perfect, but you can always fill in with black. Oh, that's actually not bad. You never know with circles. You never know how they're going to go. Unless you're using a tool to make sure that they are perfect. Then you should know how it's going to go. A little bit more space to go. I'm just going to stop and take a break right here because you always want to remind yourself that it's okay to take breaks. You shouldn't just push through to the end just because you only have a little bit left to go. You always want to take breaks. It's good for your hands. So you pause, you force yourself to stop to remind yourself to take those breaks. Okay, space filled in. I'm going to scribble over it again like I've been doing. I'm seeing a lot of the line work kind of bleed through, so I just want to scribble in to fill out the space a little bit more. Okay, last but not least, in the corner over here, I'm just going to sign, do a little signature. Feel free to write your name or signature or script, whatever you usually do when you're signing something. I'm also going to take a look over the drawing and see where we can see some of the pencil work. We're going to do some erasing. We don't want people to think that this is our rough draft or anything, so we're going to go over the pencil work with our eraser. Okay. Take an extra beat to look at it, make sure you didn't miss anything major. Okay, looking good, looking good. You gotta really take some time and look at it because there's always gonna be pencil work you miss. See up here, the old chin. Dust that bad boy off. And there we have it. There is our finished Dracula drawing. Perfect for the Halloween season. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you had some fun. We'll see if we do a little bit more of this kind of stuff in the future. In the meantime, take care and happy drawing.